We're going.
He just has no one.
Really? God, he's a keeper then.
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the annual budget hearing for the town of Webster. If I could invite you to stand for the pledge of allegiance, we'll have Mr. King lead us in the pledge.
Did he hear you? Paul, you're up, dude.
You're leading us, Paul.
Pledge us up. Good.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Good to see everybody turn out for this. Hopefully a few more people will turn out as the evening goes on. So this is our opportunity to make sure that we understand and the select board is able to hear from the public about the warrant articles that are being proposed. I would just issue a general reminder that we are a small community. When we come up to speak tonight or to ask questions, let's be mindful of the fact that we're all neighbors and belong to part of Webster. And this meeting is being recorded and will be available to folks later on. So comments that are made you should be mindful that they are being recorded and will be available to folks. So traditionally we have the warrant. Remember, as a traditional town meeting town, we will have our voting take place on Tuesday, the 12th day of March. And the polls will be open from 10 in the morning until 7 at night. And the questions that will be on the ballot to be voted on that Tuesday are the following. The first is to choose all necessary town officers for the ensuing year. So that'll be a ballot vote taking place on that Tuesday. And at the end of this meeting, those who have filed to run for election will have an opportunity to introduce themselves to the folks in attendance and to comment on their reason for running for the office. So we'll hold on that until the end of the meeting so that people can hear from the candidates. Article number 2, are you in favor of allowing the planning board to have the authority to assign such section numbers to the zoning ordinances as it may deem appropriate, provided that no substantive change to the ordinance shall occur because of this renumbering? The planning board is recommending this by a 5-0 vote, and because it's a change to the zoning ordinance, it will require a vote at the ballot day. So that question will be on there. It'll be a yes or no. And I'm going to pause for a second and see if there's anybody who wants to speak to that and explain the purpose of renumbering or why this is here. Russ?
I can explain it. It's just a housekeeping ordinance. So over the years, we've done zoning amendments, and as the ordinance gets longer or shorter, depending on what we put in and take out, the table of contents no longer lines up with where things are in the ordinance. And every time we need to change the table of contents, it requires an entire vote of the town to do that. This article allows us to renumber it without having to go to town meeting every single time to change the table of contents. So this will allow me to fix that.
Are there any questions or comments that people want to make regarding that article? Perfect. Thank you for that explanation, Russ, and remember that'll be on the ballot on Tuesday. The next article, number 3, is an amendment to the Hopkinton-Webster Refuse Disposal Agreement, and I'm going to choose not to read all this because it is very lengthy, and I think everybody can read that for themselves, and it'll shorten our evening up here. But I do want to see if anybody wants to present or comment about the purpose of Article 3.
Yeah, so as you may have heard, there has been a defunct committee where Webster has had little say anyway in the operations of the transfer station. As a result of that, both Webster and Hopkinton Select Boards have worked together to craft a new agreement that codifies much of the way that things are actually working today, while adding in reporting and defining ways that Webster can have a say in how the towns act, manage, and even if they want to act independently. A good example of the independent functioning is the Green Bag program that Hopkinton has and Webster does not. As such, you'll see this on the ballot, not a town meeting, to adopt, and this replaces the existing agreement. Both towns must pass this for it to come into effect. Most of it is very similar or the same as the previous agreement, just updating the pieces that need to be.
I would point out that the select board, who have read this in way more detail than I have voted 3-0 to recommend this to the town. And then, as David said, it will require a affirmative vote in Webster and also in Hopkinton. But are there questions or comments that people would like to make about this article?
I do actually want to comment one quick thing. Depending on when this was printed or seen on the display, which I should actually scroll down to on this one, you may see a 3-0. That is not that we are necessarily in 3-0 in favor of the article currently. That was for the vote that we were 3-0 to present that article here tonight. And so we will have a board vote for those that will show up on the actual warrant for town meeting and voting.
Thank you for that clarification. Are there questions? Chris?
Do I have to identify myself? Chris Shadler,
Let's make that's a good practice.
okay, Tyler Road, Webster. A question to Dave.
Yes.
And the select board. I haven't read this, so I don't know if there is in this part of it, the idea that Webster would also adopt a green bag protocol.
There is not.
There's not, okay.
So like with Hopkinton's enactment of the Green Bag Program, if one were to be enacted here, that would be its own warrant article in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about this article? I'm pausing because this isn't a discussion at town meeting, right? So people are gonna have to show up on Tuesday the 12th knowing whether they're voting yes or no to this. So, and I know everybody just got it, but I wanna make sure that people have an opportunity to understand that.
Well, maybe I do have a question. Hopkinton has a green bag program and they use the same hopper that we do. So all of it goes in the hopper and we're paying for the tip and ship costs, even with the green bags in there. So you're gonna need a sub-ledger to identify what's the tonnage that belongs to Hopkinton and their green bag program, and they pay for the shipping. Is that part of this agreement?
So the way that it's phrased is that when a town enacts a program that the other town doesn't, those revenues or expenditures are tied to that town and do not go into the cost-sharing portion. For them, that is the revenues of the green bags, because they are supposed to have green bags to be there, but the green bags are not designed to be the full cost of the trash. So for the Hopkinton residents, the however many thousands of dollars that they get from the green bag sales just goes into this offsets as revenue only for Hopkinton.
Only for Hopkinton.
But it doesn't change any of the other logistics.
And Hopkinton, Webster people show up at the dumpster and they throw the green bags and I throw my white bags into the same hopper.
Correct.
And Webster's paying its proportional cost to haul that out to the transfer station, or to the dump, wherever
Yes.
we're dumping it now. Say $100 a ton. We're paying $20 of that ton, even though maybe 50% of the load is Hopkinton bags. And they're keeping all the money from the sale of their bags. You follow me? I just want to see if we've got that codified in here.
That isn't, because there isn't a separate set of hoppers that would
I know.
do the different tonnage. Which is why the way that this is written is done this way. The accounting for the differences are to say that roughly each set of towns is going to have the same type or number of trash based on population, which obviously we don't have any way to prove yes or no. Their argument would be that the green bag program actually saves us money because they incentivize producing less trash. Your argument is, of course, they're just getting paid for it, so, and producing more. So you have the opposite sides. We don't really have a way to prove one or the other. But part of this does say that there will be a report that states what they do know and what those revenues, for example, are and how
Add
that
that
works.
to the report. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we'll continue on with the warrant. So that is,
The end of the ballot.
it is the end of the voting ballot, right? So you'll notice there's a section now that says the rest of this will occur at traditional town meeting. That is going to take place on Saturday, March 16th at 10 o'clock right here in the Grange Hall. So the town is asked to come, and then the rest of these will be the hand vote sort of thing that we're going to go through. So let's start with number 1. And just before we leave that, is there an effort to, how will information be shared out on, like, I think about that being a lengthy warrant article, and how will people, where's the source of information for people so that they know?
In which manner?
I mean, unfortunately,
Are you talking about the transfer station?
yes, correct. So, you know, the grapevine is sort of retiring at this point, so that's been a great source of information for many years. I just worry that something lengthy like this, is it the Facebook or where will people go to get it?
It is a good question. We should have at least the information posted on the website. There's going to be several different YouTube videos from when we discussed it, as well as when we met with the Hopkinton board jointly, both here and there. So there's plenty of information if people want to find it. But you're right, it is not going to just show up in somebody's mailbox unless Dee decides to run her paper.
I might do one in March, just to get people out, so I'm really thinking about it.
Thank you, Dee. I think, unfortunately, it's a missed resource because people have been depending on.
Well, I thought I
grapevine.
had somebody taking it over and,
Well, now I feel like I'm guilting you into it, but, sorry.
Yeah, nice, Mike.
Or not sorry, I'm not sure. But I just think something as lengthy as this, it's important that people have that knowledge.
oh, I agree. People showed up, which just makes me proud of my paper.
Yeah, you should be proud of it. That was many years of good community service. George, you started to raise your hand.
Yeah, I haven't, I only put it down because I didn't know how long you'd be talking, I was gonna get tired. So, I'll be honest,
I'm not that
So,
lazy.
that being said, what about like a thing where everybody could submit their email to the town, and the town could send out like a group email to everybody's email? Everybody looks at their emails, everybody looks at their texts, some sort of thing like that. I don't know what would be involved in making that happen, you know, but we don't really have a way to know stuff, and I mean, we've talked about how to hook up in this method. It's not easy for everybody to hook up into that town site. I mean, it took me a while to get anything to be functional when I looked to it. And I'm not terribly computer savvy, but I'm sure there's people less computer savvy than me. So, you know, maybe a group email that goes out to everybody willing to submit their email to the town, and then the town could actually, as like we had like a select board meeting that says, it's gonna be on this, this, this. How do you know? I had no idea, you know, I mean, this was like a last minute find for me as well. You know, so something that could go out to anybody's email, you know, and then if you don't look at your email, that's on you. But I mean, if an email can be sent out, then at least you would have something, and then you can go, okay, I wanna go to this meeting, so.
Yeah, so I will say that we do have the website that you can sign up for notifications. The notifications will show up, for example, like when we say that this is happening. And so you'll get that, and usually there is accompanying information with it. We will certainly have the copies of the warrant and such posted when we are notifying and noticing both voting day and town meeting day on the website. And so people who are signed up should see that information. I'll ask if there are any other methods from our town folks before I. Okay.
We find that one quite effective when we post notices on the website. People that we have their emails get copies of what it is. That's probably the most effective. Obviously, we put notices here, but I understand why people don't see them. at some point, there's going to be, at the police station, a way to get messages out, so that would help. The hardest thing, I think, that we do is communication. It's hard to get the word out, but great idea.
Thank you. Chris?
I would suggest, since the town of Webster has a couple of Facebook pages, that you use that. I don't know legally or administratively if it's right or wrong to put an entire thing such as this, you know, transfer station issue onto a Facebook page. I don't know anything about that. But if it's not cool to put the whole thing on Facebook, maybe an alert or a town, something could come out telling people, you know, on March 16th, you're gonna have to vote for this thing. It's located, you'll find it located on maybe the front page of the town website. Make sure you read it, because it's long and important, something like that.
Great feedback, thank you. George?
Yeah, just put a link.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
A link. Why didn't I think of that?
And I will just follow up briefly to say that the town does not have, maintain, or check Facebook pages. Just in case anyone is thinking that we do. I do tend to be somewhat active on Facebook because of my other jobs. So you will often see stuff posted by me or a supervisor of the checklist to say that voting is coming up. But I will definitely try to be doing that once we have the official document sent.
David?
Just real quick, where do you sign up to get those notifications? Is that on the front page of the town website?
I can sign you up right now.
I signed up
But
years
yes,
ago and
we
I'm not
have
really-
contact on the website as far as an email to send to us, and go ahead and do that, and tell us you'd like to be added to the list.
Dana, did you send notice out about this hearing
Yes.
on that? Okay, because I get library notices all the time, but that's it. So let me re-sign
You
up.
should have gotten one.
Let me
so-
double check my
So
own,
it dropped again.
I'll double check my own.
Okay.
It must be it must be that this thing's right in the way because they use similar. So I'm just gonna drag this over here for a second.
Yes, let's take a minute to show this.
And it's a little bit small, but if you look on our main website, if you scroll to the bottom, there's a button on the left that says subscribe to news. You can go there and sign up for whichever things that you are interested in town, and you will get that news.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, thanks for that, David. I'll stop moving. It's great for people who don't see. Okay, are we good on that? So now we're gonna move on to town meeting. So the first article is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,827,866 for general municipal operations. This article does not include appropriations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately, and a majority vote will be required. So this is the main operating budget, and I'll turn it over to the select board to comment on what we have. And you all have the handout, so follow along.
So I'm going to actually give a kind of overview of all the different funds because they're all somewhat linked together this time. So regarding the budgets, which is our primary topic, I'm going to frame this with where we are. We've consistently had one of the smallest increasing appropriations, including last year where it was virtually flat. And unfortunately, much of the funding that we had stashed for things like roads needed to be used after the major flood storms. For the town finances, we of course normally have several articles, starting with the budget and working our way through the funds. This will be no different, but there is some restructuring going on to promote use of the funds towards overages and projects, with the budget being more of the expected all-the-time operations. So I'll cover that as well. Overall, across all of it, we are up 6%, which comes from roughly an 11.4% budget increase and a 5.3% decrease in the ask for the funds. I'll cover the funds first, which will help explain the budget. Several items are significantly lower than prior years due to having healthy balances or not being used for a while. There are two standout increases though, which are the fire department vehicles and the transfer station. These have massive increases of 40% and 134% respectively. as recommended by the CIP committee and accounting for approximately $100,000 worth of increase. Road preservation was also recommended to double from $100,000 to $200,000 by the CIP committee, back up to what it was previously for normal funding levels. You will, however, see that this is only $100,000 in the fund request, as we put $100,000 additional into the budget for this purpose, as the amount would never go unspent towards road preservation in a given year anyway. This brings us to the operating budget itself. One of the primary drivers of increases are inflationary lines such as insurances, wages, contract renewals, costs of goods and services. Additionally, this is a much more expensive year for elections due to having 4 instead of just 1 last year. Legal is also increasing dramatically due to use for utilities valuation litigation that our prior assessing firms had in concert with many other towns now being enacted. Fortunately, the contract we have at this point includes defensive valuations, so should not cause a similar type of spend like this in the future, even with litigation. The highway budget is up significantly, as previously explained, with the move from the road preservation fund. And lastly, solid waste disposal is up significantly after being way over budget last year, and we have used the projected figures directly provided by Hopkinton in order to come up with the funding level for this year. There are some savings areas, though, to help. Contracted technology services is down. Insurances and wages aren't as big of a hit as they could have been, thanks to having had an open position for the start of the year with the police department. Of course, electricity is also down, thanks to cheaper power with Webster Community Power that you all passed last year and is now beginning power delivery at the end of this month, beginning of next month. Again, these are the overall numbers, an increase of 6% overall, comprised of an 11.4% increase in the budget and a 5.3% decrease in warrant article funding. This includes the capital reserve funds, expendable trust funds, and appropriation capital outlays, such as the bond for the dam and the Historic Society requests. This figure does not include the discontinuation of funds that will be discussed in later warrant articles, and those will be discussed individually there. With that, I yield back.
Are there any questions for the select board about the general operating budget? So you can raise your hand first. I don't know your name, sorry.
Mark Rothier, on Deer Meadow Road.
Thank you, Mark.
I understand that the expenses are going up 6% roughly. With the new home valuations that just hit, my tax bill for property went up over 30%. It increased over $2,000. Is that normal? I mean, I was told that, you know, the valuation would come with a different rate per thousand and it would even out, and then when we got our bill, it was substantially higher.
So I guess I'll field this one. So the average across Webster would have been up, I think it was approximately 60% for valuation of the house. If your house was up a lot more than that, you would see a large tax increase. If your house was up less than that, you would see a tax decrease. All other things staying the same. So the average is approximately 60-ish%. And the office can help clarify for you and give you more details on the assessing and so on.
Yeah, it was 100%.
So if you went up 100%, then yes, you went up more than the majority of the town did, which is why your tax bill went up. I can't speak to why that would happen. That would be a question for the assessors.
All right.
The only other thing I would add is that the town is actually one of the smaller portions of your tax bill. So
No,
remember,
this was a you. This wasn't Bill's for anything. I
Wasn't billed for
understand
anything.
that. I'm a former commissioner over there. I understand that.
Yep.
This was you, not them.
It was you.
The town of Webster.
Not the school district.
This was the town of
This was
West.
assessed value as opposed to because
Right,
of.
right, right. I'm just,
Yeah,
in terms of this, but remember that impacts and touches the county and also the village. That's all I'm saying. So,
Yeah.
you know, this is one portion of it, there are two other pieces. I had George next, and I'll come to Barbara.
Yeah, mine actually went up like almost 2.5, but I called the assessors and fixed that, because they said, we just looked at the outside and figured the inside looks just as nice. Well, that being said, it's 243 years old, and it always needs something, you know? I'm a caretaker, not an owner. The other thing I was gonna bring up, and we had this conversation once before, that yes, inflation brings up stuff and this and that, but we've gone up like so many percent the year before, so many percent the next year, and so that percent is still there every single year. So we get inflation, but if we went up in percentage, but paid for whatever we went for, then that percentage should still carry over every single year. So why does it not seem to, and we keep seeming to have to keep coming up with more and more money? Does that make sense?
Unfortunately, inflation doesn't stop.
Right, but on the old stuff, if, like last year, the year before, we spent on something and then that's been taken care of, that money is still there each and every year for each and every new thing. And then we're talking about adding on to that. That's kind of the piece I'm trying to make clear.
Barbara and then George.
I grilled the assessors, and the entire town went up 64%. This is their explanation. And the people that took the hardest hit have the smaller homes, because the market for open entry-level homes got red hot, and people were they were adding more to the sale price or the bid price. So the price of the smaller homes went up seriously,
We
and
just
the
had
bigger
our house
homes.
appraised, and our house appraised less than they're taxing us at.
My house went up 56%, but my taxes went up like $14 or something. The difference was, it's under that 64%, which was the entire town.
George?
Just a word of advice from my own personal experience and from others. First thing, check the town's tax card for accuracy. I'm involved in what's probably going to be a class action lawsuit in Belmont right now. It's their 5-year reval last year, and I went through that 5 years ago with a piece of property that turned out I was not up to date. We've been assessed at $53,000 for, boy, I don't know how long. They bumped it up to $92,000 with the reval. And this is before, you know, people were paying 30% more than the asking prices, the crazy stuff for the last couple of years. Settled for, I think it was 23, 2 days before the state hearing. Now, I think in this town, sitting where you folks sit, when we've had requests for abatements in the past, and we handed it off to our assessor, the company that we've employed at the time. What I've seen is conscientious work on their part to evaluate that abatement. That's not true of all towns, though. And they could be mistaken. I know in my case, it was grossly mistaken. I mean, we had one room that was double the square footage of what it really was, and a completed, well, let's see, a completed garage and breezeway with 2 porches, which were really just cantilevered overhangs and dirt, except for a cement block for steps. And because a lot of these companies hire bodies off the street that are there for 3 or 4 months, and they're paid by the place they've checked out. And they don't always get it right.
So
I don't even know who we have now, but first start by looking at your tax card.
Excellent advice. Check the tax card for accuracy. I did that, and they corrected my mistake, and they found another mistake in their favor that was, made it worse. So, anyway, I didn't pick on that one. All right, any other questions about the budget or article number 1, which is the main operating budget? All right, so we will move on, and that will be debated on the floor on Saturday the 16th. So our article number 2 is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $534,100 to be added to the following established capital reserve funds under RSA 45-1, and a majority vote will be required. I'm not going to read down the list. You can all read what is printed there. Please note there are 2 items on the next page, but these are our traditional capital reserve funds. And David, do you want to speak to this?
Just the same thing.
Are there questions or comments about the capital reserve funds? Seeing none, we'll move on to a hearing on article number 3, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $132,600 to be added to the following established expendable trust funds for RSA 31:10A. Again, I'm not going to read down the list. David, is there anything to comment on these?
Same thing.
Other questions? Comments? Points of interest?
I guess it's just worth noting, because it was one of the points that brought up, that road preservation is 100,000 there instead of the 200,000, because 100,000 of that is in the budget.
Are we ready to move on? We're going to go to Article 4, to see if the town will vote to expend and withdraw. What's the wording on this one?
We'll fix it.
How should it be worded?
It should not have the word withdraw.
Okay, will the town vote to expend the sum of $46,968.40 for the purchase of a new police cruiser and related equipment to come from the Police Cruiser Capital Reserve Fund created for that purpose? The 2016 police cruiser will be traded or sold, with the proceeds being returned to the general fund. No additional funds will be raised through taxation, and this is a special warrant article, majority vote required. David, or I see the chief is here also. I don't know if somebody wants to speak to that article.
So I'll briefly just state one thing and then turn it over to the chief. The reason that you're seeing no additional funds from taxation, this warrant article does not appropriate any of that funding that is in the previous warrant articles, where it is for the police cruiser fund. So it is using that funding to do this, but this particular warrant article does not cause any taxation. The agents to expend, or the people that allow this spending to happen, on most funds are the select board. On this particular fund is the townspeople. And so that's why you see it as a warrant article when this happens. So I'll turn it over to the chief.
Okay. The reason we are getting rid of the 2016 Cruiser, right now it has 138,000 miles on the speedometer, with 4,948 hours of idle time on it. So Ford says idle time is 32 miles per hour, which adds another 158,336 miles. So according to Ford, that car has 307,040 miles on it. And it's gonna start costing us a lot of money. We've never had to replace a motor or a transmission, and we wouldn't be able to run a car if we did that, because it would overspend our complete budget just about. We won't be able to buy a 24 Cruiser. They're not gonna make them. They're not gonna make them till 25, so we're gonna have to buy a 23 Cruiser, which are in short supply right now. If we had to wait, we probably wouldn't get a car till November or December. We buy a car this year, we won't need a car until 26, at least, if not 27, for what we have.
Questions or comments about the police cruiser? Thank you, appreciate that, Chief. We'll move on to Article 5, to see if the town will vote to establish a contingency fund for the current year under the provisions of RSA 31:98A for unanticipated expenses that may arise, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $16,446 put into the fund. This sum is to come from the unassigned fund balance. Any appropriation left in the fund at the end of the year will lapse to the general fund. This is an individual warrant article with a majority vote required. Explanation of the article?
This article is one that we've done for several years. Under the state RSA, we're allowed to take this money from the general fund and not from the present year's taxation. The amount is calculated by 1% of the former years or the previous year's operating budget. 2 years ago, we used some funds to remove a dangerous building that we hadn't planned on doing. This was a property that had been taken by a tax deed that we were having a lot of problems with vandalism and danger there. So that was 2 years ago. This year we removed, I think, $8,500 worth of dangerous trees that had to be removed. The goal is not to use this and have it go back in the general fund.
Questions or comments about the contingency? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to help offset the cost of the bond for funds to repair the dam. Passed at the Pillsbury Lake Water District meeting held on August 5th, 2006. The majority vote is required. It's my favorite warrant article, the dam warrant article. So who wants to comment on the dam warrant article?
Normally Dee does, I don't know if she's up for it.
Well, we've been doing this for many years when the dam blew out by a flood at the Pillsbury Lake, so we've helped them put up their dam. I think it's a good idea, because if all those properties didn't have any water frontage, they'd be paying less taxes and everybody else would be making it up. So I think it's good water.
All right, questions and comments. I saw David and Chris. I don't know who.
I think she was the fastest.
She was faster? Okay, Chris, we're gonna give it to Chris.
I just wanted to know when we can get to not pay this anymore. How close? 2 more
26.
years?
2026. I think.
Okay.
Will be the
Almost
last
there.
payment. And that's
Yeah.
2017. All right, so.
And that was my question.
Oh, so you guys,
Yeah.
one mind thinking alike. George, all three of you. George, you came in
We're the
third.
same.
You were too slow. All right, anything else on the dam warrant article? I don't know what I'm gonna do in 2027. Can't say that. All right, article number 7, to see if the town will vote to raise the tax credit for the optional veterans credit and the all veterans credit in accordance with RSA 72:28, Roman 2, and RSA 72:28-B, Roman 2. To increase the credit from $500 to $750. Is there anybody who wants to explain this?
I'll let him.
The legislature sets the amounts that a town can use for veterans credits, and they raised it this year from 500 to 750. So this article is to ask if you would be interested in it being raised to 750. Based on the number of veterans we have, it would impact the town about $17,000. And of course, that eventually would affect the tax rate, but that's, would add another $250 to the tax credit.
Questions or comments about this article?
I just have a
Chris.
quick one. Is this money that helps veterans pay taxes, or is that how it works? Is it discretionary at all? Can can they use it in any way they want, or is it specifically to help them with
It's
taxes?
a credit on the tax bill.
Okay,
So
great.
if I understand it correctly, this is the tax bill, and then a veteran will receive that credit off of it. And what I think Dana said is that results in about 17,000 additional dollars being shared by everybody else. So it's a way that we can all help the veterans who live in the town. George?
I actually got the $500 thing passed a couple of years ago, that I had to get so many signatures and come before the board and say my piece. And it's not just veterans, you know, if you're a spouse of a veteran, your spouse died, you know, you still get that carryover, which is nice for them. And it's just money that doesn't have to be paid by the veteran, but I was told it didn't necessarily come directly out of anybody, it just meant the town didn't get it. But I guess indirectly, that does kind of create some sort of, interesting to find out that's how many veterans we have to create that much of a cash swing.
68.
68?
68 last year. And of course, that changes.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on to Article 8 to see if the town will vote to discontinue the expendable trust fund that was established by town meeting on March 11th of 1986 to cover the cost for printing and binding of Webster history. This fund has a balance of approximately $10,000. Anybody want to comment, or actually, let me ask to explain it and then we'll take a comment from Barbara.
So it has come to our attention that there have been several unused and or overlapping funds. While each are presented in separate warrant articles, you'll see 3 more after this, the concept is the same across all of them. If they are no longer needed due to lack of use or redundancy, we should close them so the money can be used towards offsetting taxes in the future, such as every select board tries to do at the end of the year while setting the tax rate. These funds are as follows to see if they are appropriate or not to close. Again, this is not the final set of warrant articles. We'll decide that after this meeting for what will go forward. So if one of these is not appropriate, you would not see it on the town meeting warrant article. We had them in a different order before, so it is not this one first, but the Capital Reserve Fund for tax matters. These are no longer a save up and do a big update, but are included in the operating budget every year. The Expendable Trust Fund for unexpected highway building expenses, as this covers the sand shed, but we are both in the process of putting a new replacement for that, and which has its own fund, and we have a municipal property maintenance fund that can cover that as well. The softball soccer field capital reserve fund, which can also be covered by the municipal property maintenance fund, and the Webster Historic Capital Reserve Fund. This fund has been used in the distant past for doing and printing the Webster History Book. There is no Webster History Committee, nor further information we have been given as to who may be part of that or write a new book in the near future. That being said, in today's world where only a few would likely be printed and a PDF posted that anybody would be able to copy, print excerpts from, etc., publishing costs would likely be low, and the fund is likely not needed even once the book is written. If, on the other hand, a book were to be printed for each resident in town, that would need very ample funding, such as this fund. And so, being we have some of the history folks, I would encourage them to be allowed to speak first.
So David just addressed 8, 9, 10, and 11, if I did my math correctly on this. So we'll go a little quicker maybe, but let's take them in order. So let's start with the history one first, and Barbara, you have your hand up.
If my history is correct, the $1,000 that seeded that fund came from the Webster History Committee. They wrote the last book, and they gave it to the town of Webster so that they could annuitize it to make it grow. And that $1,000 from 1986 is now $10,000. Says something about the power of money over time. I think the money belongs to the Webster Historical Society, which will write the next book, because it is the people of the Historical Society that wrote the last book and gave that $1,000 for that fund. And the whole purpose was the next book that would be written by the Historical Society.
Barbara, at one time, the books were being written every 50 years.
Yeah, they are. 2033 is the next one.
What year?
2033?
33.
And we're already working on it. I'm working on the genealogy side, Dot's working on the buildings and the bridges, and even the state DOT is gonna give us some information about bridges, so. We're already on it. We don't really know exactly how we're gonna publish it, because in this digital world, we don't know yet. But I'm not even sure I'll be alive in 2023, but.
You were alive in 2023.
Yeah, you're still here.
I should be?
It's
23, you said 23, you passed it.
2033.
There you go. I was gonna say, she's still here.
I already passed the other. So if anything, that money was seeded by the Historical Society. If you're gonna get rid of it, as the treasurer of the Historical Society, I would take it and put it into Vanguard and invest it there instead of with the town of Webster. It's the only difference.
Other questions or comments about that, the historical article?
Just a, excuse me, 9, 10, and 11 all say that those funds would be put back into the general fund. It does not say where that 10,000 would go. What was the intention?
The same.
The same. It needs to state that.
Well, I would seriously mount an objection.
Actually, the state RSA has to go to the town's general fund in cases like this.
Oh, well, then maybe we better leave it, because we will be printing a book.
I mean, so you can't give it to an organization, it has to go in the general fund. Later on, you might do something different. And I apologize for me forgetting to put that in there.
So other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I don't know who you
Deborah Grithier on Deer Meadow.
did. Thanks, Deborah.
Is there a way to research the history of the fund to see what actually was originally put into that fund, so it can still stay earmarked if they're still planning on doing it? It would seem, since the
Barbara's
RSA is still
absolutely
requiring
correct
it to
with
stay.
how that was funded. In the warrant article from 1986, it was $1,000 start.
Given by
But
the
what
Webster
happened?
Historical Committee.
Did it only grow by itself, or has it been funded since then, is the question that I was asking.
Okay, I don't know, but I'll find out for you if you'd like.
Any other questions or comments?
So on Article 11, $3,000 left across the street. I can't see that sand shed's gonna be moved out of there in the next, how many years? Before you have the money to do what we need to do down the street? So, right now, the electrical over there is where the tree came down, that needs to be done up. And the bottom of the door, where all your signs and, road signs and, stuff that we use, cutting edges are all in there, and that door, doesn't go up and down real well. That really needs to have some attention, so somebody doesn't get hurt in the next 5 years. So, $3,000 isn't even gonna take care of the door and electrical stuff that's over there, so you would have thought that when you do things like that, from that, you would speak to somebody first to see what their opinion was, a department head. So, take the $3,000, put it back into general fund, then we can, find the money elsewhere to do what we need to do over there. 'Cause I don't see anybody leaving across the street right anytime soon, unless you guys have a different plan, some money hidden away somewhere to put a sand shed up across the road. I know we're getting up there, making baby steps, which that's what we have to do these days times, but
Thank you, Emmett. I want to try to, can I make sure, are we set with number 8 on the historical? Has everybody said their piece relative to that? Corey, do you have something on 8?
Just a question, if I can go right through Emmett.
The $3,000, I know where you're coming from, and I understand that wholeheartedly, but it's gonna take more than that to clean that piece of property up.
Correct.
It's, that's been that way for, since Christ was a corporal, sorry.
I see there's a hood of a car sticking up there now.
It's not gonna clean itself up, and that's gonna take a lot of money to get what's in that ground out of there. So, you do what you want, but that $3,000, you're gonna have to probably quadruple that, if not more, just to clean that piece of property up.
Thank you. Anything else on historical first? Okay, so we'll move on. We know that's gonna change form, because we have to add some pieces into that, and I think the select board's heard good feedback, Robert, thank you. So number 9 is talking about the tax maps, and that's a $2,000 closure that'll go back into the general fund. Does anybody want to comment on the tax map one? David said it's covered by the current budget, so that's why it's not necessary. Any comments on tax maps? I'm going to move on to number 10. Number 10 is about the softball and soccer fields, and this is $2,500 available, and that is for the soccer fields across the street on the side of the school, and the softball field in back is actually, it's half on school property and half on town property, so the town has maintained that. Are there any comments about softball or soccer? Just a general comment, I've gone down there with the girls, the softball field's in kind of rough shape. I don't know if we still have leagues that play on it, but, if there were funds available to help with that, I think the base paths are pretty grown in at this point, so it could use some attention, but this is just my feedback on it. Anyone else? Chris?
I just have a general question about this. If number 10 was voted through, we're talking about number 10, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Voted through, would that mean that there would be virtually no maintenance on the softball fields?
No, so as I think is here, is it up there? So not listed there, but in what I stated, we do have a general municipal property maintenance fund, which does cover this. And we've actually used that in the past to do things, for example, with the soccer field, with the porta potties that we put over there, et cetera. So there's different aspects, and there is another fund that covers what is over there.
So that in the budget, David, that's the second one from the end, municipal property maintenance fund.
Mhm.
And we're budgeting 5,000.
Yes.
Actually, we're budgeting 7,500 because you're adding that 2,500 into that.
No.
No, you're adding 2,500.
No.
No.
This 2,500 goes into the general fund.
Yep.
And it does not change what goes into other things as part of the budget.
So that increase of 2,500 was not that 2,500?
Correct.
Got it. Anything else on baseball, softball? And soccer, sorry. Okay. And then the next one is back to the highway building that Emmett has already commented on. Are there any additional comments about the highway building fund?
I'll just state the exact same thing, that this is, and one of the reasons we did not worry about going to all the department heads is because this is also covered by that municipal property maintenance fund.
So,
Basically, there's two funds that cover the same thing, so we decided that we only needed to have one fund covering it.
what's the other fund that's gonna take care of the door and electrical?
So that's the first that I'm hearing about that issue. However, the municipal property maintenance fund would be able to be used for that.
Is that the same fund that's gonna clean that piece of property up? Because you're gonna have to increase that. line item.
There currently, to my knowledge, is not a specific fund for cleaning the property.
But that's a liability of the town. And it's been that way for 20-some odd years. Wow, and they're just finding out about it? Ooh, wow.
Chris, you had your hand, I think?
Well, there's money that we had been putting away to build a new salt shed. is money still accruing into that account?
Yes.
So,
And part of the, let me find that. That has a significant amount in it and is scheduled this time to have 7,500 added to it, which is not a huge amount, but there is over 153,000 in that account currently, even after the work that has been done.
okay.
So that project is not in worry of stalling because of finances.
Okay, thank you.
George?
What is the cleanup issue over there? Because I have no idea, I'm just curious.
Emmett, do you have a handle on the cleanup needs down there?
You don't have to itemize it, I'm just kind of curious.
Oh, I don't know,
Somebody said there's a car sticking out of the ground, I mean, was it?
I've dug out many cars that dug out of the ground over the years over there. They buried them all over there when they put that up. Paul Blake built that back in, what was it, early 80s?
Got buried cars and all sorts.
Yeah, all kinds of iron that sticks up. I don't know how many loader tires it's cost me.
Really? Wow.
But, I mean, I don't know, just, I don't know what they're gonna do.
Okay.
Interesting.
And I'm assuming it has to be dug up, it can't just be covered over with something.
Well, it's been that way since then, so it,
There should be, I believe, I'm getting old enough, so my memory's somewhere else right now, but there was an environmental impact study on that piece of property because of the salt and downstream. You go over there, it doesn't take impact, it doesn't take somebody that doesn't understand what's going on. All the trees are dead over there. And it didn't die because of a lightning strike. The salt's in that ground and it's gone deep.
Well, and
that river, right behind it, a river runs through it.
And having kids at the elementary school, they have bottled water. They can't drink the well water there, so I'm sure it's all tied together, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions or comments about the building? The only other question I would ask the select board is, so I love this building, and I just noticed outside, I mean, it's in kind of some rough shape. And so, you know, the building, municipal building fund, we ought to be paying attention to this building also. You know, there's some wood rot up on the steeple and paint needs and so forth. So I don't know who's overseeing this, but I hope somebody is able to pay attention.
So I'll actually comment on that one. One of the things to make note of is that we've been talking about the municipal property maintenance fund. We generally use that towards property. The town hall has its own set of funds, and so does the safety building. And so both of those also have their own individual funds that are much larger. The paint issue is one that has come up and cropped up. We started having that investigated. You can follow up with Dana further if anyone wants more information on it. But in essence, the paint should have lasted much longer than it did. It was peeling when it shouldn't. There's most likely water behind it. You've probably heard this before if you paid attention to anything that the Historic Society has done with the historic town meeting hall. And so we have been trying to find the correct people to look at that and to come up with the correct plan instead of let's slap paint on it. Dana can provide more information on where we are and how that goes over time. Currently, we've been waiting on people to get back to us.
Excellent, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments on that article? Okay, we're going to move on to number 12, to see if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for operational costs of the Webster Historical Society and repairs to Highmark Museum, received by a petition. So is there a petitioner here who would like to speak to that article? Barbara.
Again. We are trying to repair the Highmark. We've already taken the asbestos out of there, but we need somewhere between $25,000 and $40,000 to fix the water problem in the basement once and for all. And so we're doing it incrementally. 5,000 of this will go into savings, and we're hoping for a fundraiser. We're hoping to do a raffle this year, to add more money to it, but we still don't have enough yet to do the finishing repairs to the Highmar. It's gonna take plumbing, electrical, concrete, excavation. It's just a little bit larger than we've got money for right now. And if anybody's interested, I brought a balance sheet of all of our income and expenses, if anybody wants to know where the money goes.
David?
Is there any way that the select board could consider that $10,000 of number 8, which is all accrued from the original $1,000 that the Historical Society put into that project, could that somehow, via going to the general fund, which Dana says that's a state requirement, could it then go back to the Historical Commission to help with this? Because the longer that sits, the worse the problem's going to be. And this could probably save, I would say, I think, probably a pretty substantial amount of time and fundraising activities on your part.
Yeah, that $10,000 was earmarked for the book. So, you know, if we spend it today on our operating expenses, we've still got to get the book out years from now. So I'm not quite sure what to do about that. That has to go back to the general fund. But we do need, like, saving for the next time we have to repair the meeting house. Just little increments all the way. And that's one of the incremental costs that's coming up.
Thank you, Barb.
Other questions about the petition warrant article from Historical Society? All right, we'll move on to number 13, I'm sorry. To see if the town will set transfer station fees to a rate not to exceed cost plus 10%, where cost is defined as disposal plus transportation. And this was also a petition warrant article. Is there a petitioner present who would like to speak to this? Okay, so that will appear at the town meeting. Hopefully petitioners will be there to be able to explain it, so that we know what it represents and stands for.
So,
George, question or comment?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that nobody here knows how to explain what's up there. Is that kind of what you're saying? I don't want to sound rude. So are you talking the petitioners would need to speak to that, or?
Right, so the other articles the select board have written and are presenting to the town. This one, a petitioner has written and is presenting, so they would need to explain to the town what it represents. To be honest, I'm not sure I understand what that means, but.
That's what I was saying, I'm like.
But it wasn't anything that was written by the select board, or the town, so really the petitioners who wrote it have to explain what their intent is and what they're trying to
So
accomplish.
the transfer station stuff's already what you had said earlier, the figures. So this is not applying to that directly, that's more the petitioner.
Yeah, so if I may, the previous transfer station, the one that will be on the ballot, is about the agreement, which is how things run. This, in its own way, refers to the fees and fee schedule of the transfer station, so what they charge for different things. The traditional and normal way that is handled is both select boards meet, figure out what is considered to be reasonable, hold public hearings, and then when both sets of boards go through the public hearings, agree on the same thing after the public hearings, then it becomes the new fee schedule. And it must match between the two towns. That has been the typical process for deciding fees. I cannot speak to what the petitioner is expecting or trying to do with their particular warrant article. I can speak to the fact that as part of the agreement, it also says that we should look at the ordinance yearly, and the ordinance does include looking at the fee schedule.
Now, is that fee schedule covered in that original money you're talking, or is it something above and beyond that?
The fee schedule would be, for example, if you show up with a truckload of tires, how much do the tires cost to drop at the dump? That's the fee schedule and what would be handled there. As far as you bringing in your normal trash, that's all covered in the operating budget. We pay for that.
So it's only specialty, things like air conditioning, tar paper, roofing,
right,
stuff like that.
Doesn't it also include if people bring trash in that like a commercial, like pick your trash up.
Correct.
He gets charged, or whoever,
Yes,
gets charged a fee.
The general gist, though, is everything on the fee schedule is not what a normal residential customer is doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so I went there once, and one of the things was like, if you tear something down, if you have so much more than what, you know, or you might have to break it down to 4 loads, so you don't have to pay for it or whatever, you know what I mean? So, okay.
Yeah, so that is the fee schedule, which would normally be done through that public hearing process.
Other questions or comments? Barbara?
I'm just looking at this, the ordinance sets the fees, and the last time we updated the ordinance, there was a few fees in there that were market rates. And the market for recyclables and those things are all set by the, what is it, New England Regional Recycling, whatever, and they change monthly. So there was some things that we needed to, you know, say, okay, this is market rates for these particular things. I don't know how we could apply this to the cost of running the station, to dump.
So the debate will take place on Saturday the 16th, and hopefully the petitioners can explain exactly what they're trying to accomplish. And I'm sure there will be a question about whether this is advisory or required, because of the other article relative to the way the operation of the facility actually is. So lots to come on this one. George?
Well, the petitioners might be warned that an amendment be a little more clear could be in order. Now, is that something that could be amended at town meeting?
I have to double check on, I think town meeting can amend it.
No.
But it's presented this way. I'm not sure that
No.
the select board has any ability to amend it. It has to be presented as is, but on town floor, there could be an amendment.
I think.
I'm gonna double check it also.
I believe town meeting may amend as long as no change in intent is done. That's certainly not the select board, we're certainly not changing anything, so, yes.
All right, good on that. And then the last one. This does not say received by petition.
And it was.
But it needs to say received by
Yes.
petition, because it is also a petition warrant article to request the town of Webster to seek the return of 2 town-owned lots, map 6, lots 113 and 114, 1.5 acres each on Walker Pond Road. They were deemed not for sale by the select board and the conservation committee in 2017. These lots were sold by the select board to a town official on October 9, 2019 in a non-public session with sealed minutes to, who made an offer on the not-for-sale property, which was valued on Webster tax map at $22,400 each lot, for a total of $44,800 for 3 acres. The secret offer was for $7,000, 1/6 of the value. The sale broke Webster's July 3rd, 2017 selling of properties policy, which was signed by the purchaser, and New Hampshire State RSA Chapter 95:1 and 95:2, barring public officials from certain private dealings valued in excess of $200, a misdemeanor. An in-depth investigation followed, for which the buyer was prosecuted and found guilty, and by New Hampshire law was removed from the town position. And again, this is submitted by petition. Is there a petitioner here tonight who'd like to speak to this article? Seeing none, are there any comments or questions? I don't know who's going to answer them, but David and then George.
If I could say, this is like Groundhog Day all over again. It seems every year, every couple months, this comes up. It has been dealt with legally. It has been, I know the select board has repeatedly asked for advice from the town attorney. I mean, seriously. I mean, this is really getting into an absurdity. And I know that you're stuck with it because of the fact that it has sufficient amount of people's names to be on there, to be a petition article, but really, we need to move past this. This is really, it's a black eye for Webster to keep coming up over and over again.
Thank you. George?
I wasn't gonna say Groundhog Day, but that's probably better. I was gonna say deja vu.
All over again.
And I remember back at the beginning of this whole episode, the people that were the most interested said, well, all this is not a vendetta. Well, I think everybody here is familiar with the definition of a duck. If it swims, it's a bird, it has webbed feet, and it quacks, it's a duck. And I think you can define a vendetta the same way. And I've lived here 51 years, so I know the cast of characters, and I know a lot more than probably what is on the surface here. But it's old, and as far as I know, it was settled, and I remember a couple of years ago now, Concord Monitor, they continued on this theme, insinuating corruption in Webster, and when the water precinct in Bosquen, I say Bosquen because I've been here a long time,
51 years.
put up the properties that the precinct had for auction. Well, Bosquen was, hey, they were shining stars because they had the money to purchase most or all of that land on the other side of the pond for conservation purposes. And boy, we were not the good people over here because we didn't do that. And as I understand it, there's one exception there, and those properties, I think, are in a conservation easement or something like that for all time. I would also point out that when I first heard about this and saw it, and I've seen the land, it was overassessed. The guy that lost it for tax purposes, I mean, he couldn't sell it. And I think it was overassessed in the first place. And quite frankly, I don't think there's any particular value for gravel either. Some of you have probably heard that story too.
Thanks, George. Gordon?
It's not a duck, and it's not deja vu, and it ain't Groundhog Day, but it's gonna come back and bite us. It's gonna do it over and over and over again until the town does something about it. And it needs to be done. Whatever comes up, people that sit at that table are gonna have to make a decision with the town lawyer. The people in town are gonna, I don't wanna be up there when the town makes a decision, because I don't think that people in town are gonna appreciate it, but whatever. But it's gonna be there until they do something about it. Just me standing in a corner looking at it in a different view and whatever. And I'm gonna be here that day, and I just wanna see, I'll be close to the door, because somebody's gonna get hurt.
Nobody's gonna get hurt. Nobody's gonna get hurt. Other questions or comments?
Hurt feelings.
Sure you're here.
We'll take care of it. Other questions or comments about that article? All right. So it'll be back in front of everybody on that Saturday, and again, I'm sure there'll have to be some legal opinion about what exactly this means and what action would come from this. So there's more to come on this too. So Article 15 is then to transact any other business that may legally come before the meeting on Saturday the 16th. So that's a chance for somebody who has something that they want to air. They can certainly bring that forward. But it's a beautiful Saturday, and it's approaching noon. They do so at their own peril.
Right.
That's when somebody might get hurt, or you want to get out of here, right? So we'll see. All right.
I didn't mean anybody physically doing
Understood.
it. This is gonna be hurt feelings.
Absolutely. Yep, understood. All right, so that brings us to the end of this. So at this point, I'm going to shift it back to the filings for office and give people who have filed for office an opportunity to introduce themselves and express what they're running for and why they're doing that. So is there anybody who would like to speak? Marlo?
Marlo Herrick, served the first 3 years and just want to continue working to do what we can do to help keep our taxes at a hopefully affordable level, and take care of the town at the same time. And, you know, make it this great little town to live in, and we're very fortunate. So. Or if somebody else wants to. No,
Well, thank you. We've already heard people say they don't want to be up here. Thank you for wanting to be up here.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Other people who want, George?
When is the voting for you guys? I mean, I have no idea. Is
That's on Tuesday the 12th. So
Tuesday the 12th?
you'll come in and you'll vote for the people who have filed to run for office. And then you will also have those two other warrant articles that were at the beginning of this paper. Those will all be voted on the ballot.
So the 12th of March.
So right at the top of the first page for you.
Yep. Oh, come on, I missed the first 3 minutes.
We went fast. Anybody else who's filed for office that wants to make a comment or introduce themselves?
What other offices are open, are up for bid?
I don't have that list. Does anybody have the list? Mary, do you know? You received them.
Yes, yes, we had it last night, didn't we? Dana, where's the list?
Yeah. Actually, I didn't bring the list with me, but we are looking for a select person.
Okay,
Trustee of the trust funds,
okay.
the
Moderator.
Are you running, Mike?
So I'll announce now, I did not file to run for re-election. I've accepted a job in Massachusetts for next year, and so we're in the process of relocating. Honestly, one of the hardest things was not being able to continue to do this. I love this work, and I love seeing everybody on election day and just being able to be one small part of helping this operate well. But unfortunately, it's not fair to Webster to have somebody who lives in Massachusetts doing that. And so I will, I chose not to file because of that. So, so right now it will be, somebody will have to be elected on a write-in.
You've done a great job, sir. I
Thank you.
appreciate all you've done.
I talked to several people, but I couldn't get anybody to bite. So hopefully somebody will emerge here.
also a library trustee.
Okay.
And trustee of the trust fund.
Oh, I thought I said that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I believe one of the supervisors is also up.
Yes, and a supervisor of the checklist.
Oh,
Yes,
but-
there's
okay.
6. I believe there's 6.
And at least one person filed for everything except for moderator.
Yes.
Yep. So there are names on the ballot.
I don't think we've ever had a woman moderator either, in all the years I've lived here.
You stepping up, Dee?
No, I'm a select. I'm gonna retire.
Beat me to it.
You gave the newspaper up.
Being
All right.
part of that whole voting thing, no thank you.
Anybody else who is running that wants to make a comment? Perfect, so I'm gonna call this to an end then. We've had a great night, thank you all for turning out. It's 7:45, so I'm sure the select board will linger if there are other questions, but have a good night, safe trip home, and we'll see everybody back at the polls on March 12th. And then town meeting, don't blow it off because it's a nice day, there's a lot on here, and it looks like all the action is at the end, so you need to stay the whole time. So
Yeah, who
make
put
sure
that
you're here on
14?
that day. Right? Unless the select board moves it, it's at number 14, so have a great night, thank you.
Thank you.
You know, it's so frustrating that
Yeah, like the static claim.
I was doing
that's a cherry.
Actually, yeah,
Well,
may I suggest that we just.
I would not disagree.
It was a public hearing. I think we're done.
Wait,
The 0 to 3, checking that sort of thing. Committee decided the warrant articles for the history.
I mean, I would think that we would need to
We do that.
Let me double check with Dana, but I believe we have another meeting before we have to decide.
It wasn't maybe enough, but I have covered that some of the
Do you have one